Welcome to Room 101 at Harrigan Compound West. It's story time. So this week I'm having some Bengal slices, white label, in this lovely, lovely Boswell pipe. I guess it's kind of like an apple, but who cares about the terminology? It's a great smoker, and that's all that matters. The white label is a little bit milder than its cousin, and doesn't have a top note added as its cousin does. So it's more of a tobacco flavored tobacco, which is always my preference. And Bengal Slices has been pretty tasty from the minute I lit this up. I've really enjoyed it. I'm interested to see how it shapes up across an entire bowl, but for the moment it's pretty good. It's got some Virginias. I don't know that they're forward, but they kind of are. Some Cyprian Latakia and some Orientals. And it really is a little better than the sum of its parts, which I don't often say when we think about tobaccos. But there it is. And it's relatively, I would say, medium in strength and flavor. It's something you could smoke all day if you wanted to. You could probably smoke it in your house like I am right now and not get yelled at too terribly much. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes with the rest of the bowl. In the meantime, I wanted to introduce you to a very dear friend of mine, Benjamin Paul Aaron Boyce. Probably the first time I've used somebody's actual name on one of these videos. Mr. Boyce and I met in Washington, D.C., when I was in to have a job interview with another guy I'll mention by name, John Agresto, to perhaps take a job at the American University of Iraq in Sulaymaniyah. Now, you all know, I think you all know, that I did get offered that job and I took it. So meeting Boyce in this way, I remember it pretty keenly because he was the interview after mine. I had walked in and ordered a $12 or $14 omelet, which to me seemed like highway robbery, but I wasn't paying for it. John Agresto was. So I went ahead and I ate my omelet, and I saw Agresto order one himself, and he had an interview before mine, and I think he probably had an omelet then. And then Boyce came in afterwards, and I think he sat there and had lunch then too. So I guess the point of this story is that John Agresto is a glutton. But we all already knew that, those of us who know Johnny. Boyce and I passed. I got up and left. I said goodbye to John. And he introduced himself as Ben, and we shook hands. And I said, well, see you later. And he said, yeah, maybe we'll get to work together. And don't you know, that's actually how it worked out. And not only did we get to work together, which was a good thing, we ended up living together, which I thought was going to be a very bad thing, actually. We were all promised our own apartments when we got there, as a tantalizing thing that would get you to say, yes, I'll go to Iraq and work if you give me a nice apartment. And then, of course, they ran out of apartments because math. So not only did Boyce and I go to work there together, Boyce and I went there and lived there together in the same apartment. And they were pretty nice apartments. They're 3 bedrooms, luxury apartments by any estimation, especially given the location. And he and I actually got along swimmingly. I had been irritated with the idea of living with somebody else when I went there. And I kind of wanted to be on my own. But Agresto, as I explained to him how irritated I was about all of this, Agresto said something that turned out to be absolutely right, proving that even a blind squirrel finds a nut from time to time. He said, it's probably for the best because this is a lonely place, and to have a little bit of company never hurts. And that was right. And Boyce and I kind of fell in with each other. We were thick as thieves within minutes of moving on in. And, living with a grown man in your apartment, that always presents some challenges, right? We didn't really have any. We got along really well. We kept very different hours. He and the rest of the professors, it was kind of a part-time life for them. I, as the dean there, I ended up working pretty long days, not terribly long, but pretty long. So we really only saw each other in the morning if he happened to be up early, and in the evenings when we both got home. And then this weird thing happened one day. And I should preface this by saying it was never really all that easy to find all of the things you wanted by way of groceries in this place. There were grocery stores and you'd get almost everything you wanted, but there was never a guarantee that you could get everything you wanted. And so with that as prologue, one morning I woke up and I was having my coffee, and coffee was a real challenge in this place. In Iraq, for whatever the reason, cardamom is introduced into all coffee, which makes it undrinkable. So I was forever having people send me coffee in the mail, no matter how bad the shipping charge was. And to get a box to Iraq, it was pretty expensive. I think it was like $55. And yet coffee was worth so much more than that. Every time I went out of the country, I would come back with a suitcase literally filled with pounds of coffee. So I'm standing there in the kitchen, drinking my coffee, looking out at the landscape the way you do when you're trying to wake up to go to work as you drink your coffee. And Boyce comes wandering out of his room. He's in his underpants and a t-shirt, kind of disheveled, just what you'd expect. So he walks in, rubbing his face and his hair the way he would, and he looked on the counter and he saw a cake which I assure you I didn't make. How do I know this? Well, I've never made a cake, so there it is. And he pointed at the cake and he said, "When did you make the cake?" And I thought, you got to be kidding me. He came out here, made a cake in the middle of the night. It was there when I woke up, and didn't remember doing it. And I did a little bit of poking around, and turns out Boyce was on some sleeping medication at the time that would cause him to, take some leave of his senses and what have you. And in this instance, he got up in the middle of the night and made a cake. And I thought, this is the greatest thing I have ever seen in my entire life, because it seems like I'm the big winner here in the Iraqi kitchen because I get a cake that I didn't have to make. And then I got a crazy idea. And every week or so, I would buy the ingredients of a cake, leave them out on the counter. I'd wake up in the morning and have a cake again. It was like a cake factory around the apartment. It was really great. And cake was a weird thing in Iraq. You could find it everywhere. And in some way, they managed to extract all the taste out of cake. It was like eating cardboard with a different consistency. I'll never know how they did it. But if you went and bought a box of cake mix down at the grocery store, it tasted just fine. You could even get those little tubs filled with the frosting. It was actually one of the things that made life kind of livable in Iraq, along with Mr. Boyce himself, who I became, I think I can say after all these years, great friends with. We still talk. And we're 10 years out from when I left. So there it is. Sometimes what you really need is a nice person and the ingredients of a cake. Life gets a whole lot better when you've got them. It turns out that the end of the bowl on the Bengal slices is better than the beginning of the bowl, and the beginning was pretty good. If you haven't tried this one, you might want to check it out. It's actually pretty good. I don't know why we haven't been grading things, right? I'm a professor by training. I should be grading everything all the time. And I suspect if I were to give this one a grade, it would be B+, A-. It's good stuff. You should give it a try. Makes me want to try maybe the Black Label, although I have this knee-jerk reaction against having anything that's been cased all that terribly. But who knows? We might give it a try just the same. Till next week, have a good one.
H-A-R-R-I-G-A-N spells Harrigan, proud of all the Irish blood that's in me.
So another thing about Boyce, I should tell you about, and I wish I had followed his lead on this one. He went down to the bazaar where we did most of our shopping and bought himself a busload of fabric, and then he brought that fabric over to the tailors, and he had suits custom made in Iraq. And I don't know how or why, but it makes perfect sense because he brought all this stuff in and he walked out looking like an Italian gangster. I wish I had pictures of this because this was one of the funniest things I have ever seen in my life. Anyway, perhaps Boyce has a picture and he'll share later. Have a good week.